Welcome to The Bold New Normal, the podcast where bold ideas meet transformative action. I'm your host, Lucy Quist, and I'm here to challenge mindsets, ignite conversations, and inspire you to create the future you deserve. A future where equity, opportunity, and prosperity are not just dreams but realities. So let's dive in and build the bold new normal together.
I trust you. I trust you. I trust you. I'm sure you're wondering, why am I saying I trust you 3 times over? But each time I tried to say it with a slightly different tone, what thought came to mind? Did you try and read into whether it was a real statement, it was a statement just said in the moment, or a statement you really shouldn't believe? Well, I throw it back to you. Who do you trust? And who are you willing to go out of your way for? Today we're talking about being your brother's keeper or your sister's keeper. In creating the bold new normal of an Africa where everyone prospers, we need to go the distance together. Over the last few months, I have spent a lot of time recording podcasts, sharing my perspectives and views on how we create the bold new normal. And I've focused very heavily on the individual and what the individual needs to do and how the individual needs to interact with maybe family or those closest to them. But I want to touch on a subject that is probably an unlikely subject in some people's minds when it comes to creating the bold new normal. And that is, we have to go the journey together. It's not a solo journey. It's not a journey with only the people you get along with. It's not a journey with only the people that you think get you. This is a collective journey where you need to make a decision that you will be your brother's and your sister's keeper in being successful in collectively creating the bold new normal. We've got to go this journey together. So what do I mean when I say being your brother or your sister's keeper? Well, exactly what it means. It means that you've got to be willing to look out for other people who share your ambition, share the journey you want to go on, may not be going about it the same way that you would go about it, but really finding reason to trust that their intent is aligned. And so let's unpack that a little bit. The easiest thing to do is to misunderstand someone else because they have a different perspective based on different socialization, different upbringing, different life experiences, different education, I can give you a whole host of reasons why it is so easy to misunderstand another person. But I implore you to actually, for every single person that you encounter and you deal with, I implore you to actually start from the point of seeking to understand. It's one thing I have spent quite a bit of time having to learn and adjust to. So, my older son always asks questions. He's the kind of child who will ask you so many different questions on the same subject. When people say keep asking why, he will ask over and over again. And many years ago, I always assumed that his questioning was a challenge, that he was asking me why because he didn't agree, and he was asking for more information because he wanted to pick holes in it. Until one day it dawned on me that he had actually discovered an amazing secret to life, which is seeking to understand rather than to make assumptions. So when we seek to understand, we do have to ask questions, we do have to probe, rather than assume that our interpretation of another person's perspective or statement is cast in stone. Now, this is a very hard thing because just as I've described to you about my own child, sometimes when we're being questioned, we find it discomforting and disconcerting, especially when you come from a culture that perhaps doesn't really appreciate questioning. But we have to learn to build a trust that says, when you ask me questions, it's because you want to understand where I'm coming from and my perspective. And when I equally ask you questions, it's to seek to understand. And so that means that we have to reduce the extent to which we embed our questioning with emotion. Because if I ask you questions from an emotional perspective, and remember the start of this pod where I made the same statement 3 different ways and you were probably thinking, what's she trying to say? Every time I load it with emotion, you're reading more into the emotion than the statement of the words. So if we try to de-emotionalize our questioning, it will probably get us to a closer place of understanding each other because we sought to probe to understand better. So brother's keeper, we can't go it alone is point number one. We have to go together. Point number two, we have to seek to understand each other by probing appropriately with an open mind. Point number three, empathize. You know, the thing about questioning people is that it doesn't necessarily mean that we will land on the answer that we want, or we'll land on the perspective that aligns with our own, or we'll land on an outcome that says, I knew that's what you were going to say. It may be that the outcome is a completely different perspective from yours, and that is okay. Empathizing means that I can see why you see things the way you see them, and you do things the way you do them. And I can even empathize to the point of understanding why that approach may be beneficial to you. Now, I'm not talking about moral judgment, disagree. I'm just talking about other people having different ways of doing things. And I'll give you a very professional example. People always remind me about the way I do things and say, you must be an engineer. Or if they don't know I'm an engineer by training, and I explain to them that I am, they're like, aha, I can tell. That means that people have a certain perception of the way engineers think and empathize with it about being either methodical, structured, systemic thinking, so on and so forth. Now, this is very profession driven as an example, but think about people who come from different parts of the world or different countries, or even within the same country, different regions. They will also have perspectives that vary a lot. But if you empathize and understand where they're coming from, because you've sought to understood, so now you can empathize, you can see how that approach to them may be the right approach. Now, why do I emphasize the need for understanding and empathy on a journey where we have to go it together? Well, I can't walk with you if I don't really get you. I think that's how young people say it, right? I've got to get you. So what I'm suggesting is these are tools by which you get to get somebody. When you get people, that's when you can seek to develop a partnership. How do we partner on the journey that is the creation of our bold new normal together? Yep, that silence was a pause, a deliberate pause, because I want us to think about it. How do we solve specific large-scale challenges in each country on the African continent if we can't journey together? I know that I alone do not have the capacity or the human resource, whether it's time, ability, to solve every problem. And I think equally, if you're honest with yourself, you would also admit that you cannot go the journey alone. You cannot solve alone. And so we've got to be willing to walk with each other on that journey.
The Bold New Normal Conference is back. And this year, we're creating prosperity through the transformative power of culture and language. Tickets out now.
Now, that does put an onus on us as individuals, because if someone's going to come on a journey with me, they have to trust me, and I have to give them reasons to trust me. And so this is where our own personal integrity comes into play. It is not all about what the other person has to do and how they need to adjust. It's about how I need to adjust, not just to understand them, but make myself worthy of being understood and having my perspectives embraced, and for someone to be willing to partner with me on a journey. You know, every year when I host the Bold New Normal conference, it's only possible because numerous people come along with me and partner with me. Some bring their resources, their funding, their ideas, their time, their capacity. So many people come together to make this possible. But it's only possible because they believe that they can trust that not only do I understand their perspective and I understand them, but that I also actually value what they bring to the table, which is probably quite different in most cases from what I would bring to the table, but I value what they bring to the table. And that's how you really build trust. You build trust by demonstrating respect and value. You build trust by repeatedly doing the right thing. You build trust by repeatedly being willing to see when something goes wrong, whether it was the intent. You also build trust by being the one to raise your hands when you get it wrong. We really need to trust each other and give each other reasons to trust each other on this journey. And by doing so, give us reason to be our brother and our sister's keeper. That we want our brother to succeed and we want our sister to succeed. So being their keeper is not just about looking out for them, but looking out for their success, applauding their achievements, being joyful, genuinely joyful in our hearts and in our souls when our fellow partner in this journey of creating the bold new normal gets something right or does something new. And so I can tell you that every single time someone writes to me and says, because of the bold new normal, I started this organization. Because of this, the bold new normal, I have this new partner. And I have numerous examples. So if you choose to become your brother or your sister's keeper, to celebrate their success and want them to succeed, I want you to know that you're not alone. At the very minimum, you're with me. But more importantly, you're with a whole army of change makers who genuinely want to see their country and their continent prosper. So here's the deal. How are you going to take this forward? How are you going to filter? How are you going to be the one to engage? How are you going to be the one to recognize other change makers on this journey? And how are you going to be the one to actually shout from the rooftops that we can do this? We can create the bold new normal together. Think about it. I ask you again, who do you trust? Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to The Bold New Normal. I hope this episode has inspired you to think boldly and take action towards creating the future you envision. If you found value in today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who needs a dose of boldness today. Until next time, take action to create your bold new normal.
The Bold New Normal Conference is back. And this year, we're creating prosperity through the transformative power of culture and language. Tickets out now.